The one thing that I learned from a lot of our seasoned investors is that you lose a lot of money out of your first transactions because you're learning the mistakes. Money is an emotional thing, and so is housing. And a lot of people see themselves as, oh, I wouldn't live in this, so I'm not going to buy it. When they're looking for housing, they're looking for security. That's just a core need that people are wanting. That's a skill within itself to make sure that we're not creating uncertainty. All the fears that an investor goes through, it doesn't stop because I know the legislation.
We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
Welcome to Finances, your home for all things financial, investment, money and lifestyle. Hosted and curated by the very talented team of certified financial planners and Burke Britton Financial Partners.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Finances podcast. Again, Jay's still away, so Delta and I have been given the control again. So fortunately, Joe's given us another lead into another guest who's going to pretty much make our job really easy today, Delta. Is that correct? That's what I'm hearing.
It is, yeah. We're pleased to welcome Anapliotis.
Sophie Anapliotis. So that just rolled off the tongue, didn't it? Jeez, great start. Again, we're sort of sticking to the property theme a little bit here. And again, we've talked a lot with agents, and we've had sort of some other more of buying specialists, but today looking more so at that property management path and how to get the most out of your investment. So we've got Managing Director and Property Investment Specialist from Element Property Network, Sophie. Thank you. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we were talking before, you've done a few of these and you've done a bit of coaching also, yeah. So we might get some tips from you afterwards based upon
we'll see how we go.
I suppose, as always with everyone, we'd just like to hear a little bit about, I suppose, what got you to this point. So what's your background obviously in property now? I think property for around 15 years, if I've read correctly. So why property? Has it always been property? What got you to here?
It was property after I finished high school. It was never, I never really went through high school thinking that I was going to be a property manager. No property manager ever grows up thinking they're going to be a property manager. I'll tell you that right now. It's one of those jobs that you fall into. And when it's been 15 years now, when I started in property management, I was offered a 2IC position in a KFC, really. I was working at KFC during school, and that made me think, what do I actually want to do for the rest of my life? And it wasn't that. So I went to a recruiter and said, love customer service, I love fast-paced environment, but I don't know what I want to do next. And then I got offered a traineeship in real estate. And that's when I fell in love with property, and I continued. I learned every facet of real estate, which is great about having an entry-level job, traineeship, and then you get to learn every aspect of real estate. But it was the long-term relationships and the property management side of it that I enjoyed. And then I got into property investing myself, so then I had a vested interest of understanding both sides of the equation. So
you've gone through the sort of the sales path and that side of things, and those often call it like those short-term relationships, which maybe annoys some of the agents, but that difference of probably what we do and definitely what you do around those long-term relationships, is that the key thing that was the difference maybe for you? Never
call it transactional. Real estate agents really don't like it.
Is my nice terminology.
The way that I see it is property management, we do have the same beginning as what a sales agent, or if someone goes to sell their property, they engage an agent, they go through, find the right person for them. But after the leasing side of it, that's actually when the real work continues and where it begins. With a selling agent, as soon as the property's gone under contract and settled, that's when the job finishes. So that's really fast where the job begins, and that's where it makes the real difference for the investor after that period. So it's definitely long-term and ongoing.
Yeah.
Did you do sales directly or not? Did you ever get into that?
I helped the sales team, running opens, all that sort of thing. But it was that short-term side of it that I was like, that's great, but then what about the ongoing? What are they doing next? And that's the part that I really enjoy about the property management side of it. Even when I was in property management, I then went into business development management, and I liked both of them. So I liked doing a business development, but then I didn't like letting go and going, hey, now this is the person and I'm never going to hear from you again. And that's where property management did both for me.
Yeah, so that grounding that you had though along the way in all of those different roles, obviously it really clearly set your mind to what it was that you wanted to do, and as you say, those long-term ongoing relationships,
definitely
must give you a lot of fulfillment.
It does. Yeah, after 15 years, you definitely have to enjoy enjoy what you're doing. And there's in every role, there's always going to be things that you don't enjoy. And a lot of that for me is administration, sitting behind a computer. I'm definitely a people person. I love helping. I love, putting strategies together with investors and helping renters. And there's always good and bad with it. A lot of our job now, especially after the residential tenancy changes, a lot of it's compliance, administration, and making sure that everything, as financial planning, would be exactly the same.
Yeah, I was to say that overlays are pretty much exactly the same as that uplift. And then it's just being about how you manage that efficiently, like technology and things to integrate into it. Like a lot of it is just systems and processes.
Yeah.
But you've also got to have pretty good systems and processes and still understand what you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it. I think it's sort of trying to find that balance between them is probably where you feel you can see people do go wrong in that space.
And I find that a lot of people are trying to go down the path of being too systems and processes heavy, and it's meant to be there for compliance administration, making sure that we are delivering on the promises that we've kept our clients, but getting on the phone and having that real human conversation is where the real magic happens.
I think we try and view it as the more we can use sort of AI and tech and automation, it gives us more time to actually spend with the clients. Like if you can just chew out all this other time it's just labour intensive, not very fulfilling.
Tedious.
Automated. I'm very much like you. I'd rather talk to people, talk about ideas rather than fill out pieces of paper. That's what feels such a great team. But also using the tech for them to free everyone up. We like everyone in our team to talk to the clients, because then you all get that feedback and you all get to see what's actually happening. It's not just sitting out the back hiding away punching numbers. I think that's what keeps you doing it for a long time as well, doesn't it? Like I think some people in that sales industry, they love that thrill of the chase, for lack of a better term, but if you actually get to know these people over a long period of time, you've actually become sort of close to them.
Oh, 100%. And I've had clients that have gone from buying their first little property for $200,000 and then bought another one and then went to commercial, then went to industrial, then went to running business and then cycled back again, and just seeing that whole journey of them. And then they had kids in between, and you just get to know them and see what they're up to and why they're doing it as well, because it is a financial decision, and but it's not about finances, it's about them wanting to fulfill what they want to do in their lives, and the long-term side of it is the part that I enjoy.
What does a normal day look like for you or for the team? Like what would you spend most of your time doing?
There's a couple of different areas of property management. The one that the outsider sees is that we're there to collect rent and do an audit inspection every now and then. That's probably about 1% of what we actually do. My role in the business is more the front end of helping investors with pre-purchase support, looking at properties, analysing properties to make sure that they're rent ready, and then also talking them through the property management process, making sure we're the right fit, onboarding them, and then leasing and finding a good renter for them to make sure that they've got an asset that's performing for them and a tenant that loves taking care of the house. And then the day-to-day of property management is very compliance heavy, communication with renters, organising maintenance, making sure that maintenance is actually justified. How do we put it into a plan? How do we make sure we're not spending too much money? There's all that financial side of it as well.
Is that the real balancing act between keeping the tenant happy but without sort of just
100%.
pandering to any requests?
100%. And everyone has different expectations, but also different knowledge of how to handle things. Perfect example, on the weekend, they called and said, I have no hot water. We do have an after hours procedure, and the plumber would have said the same thing, check that your pilot light is on. But if they don't know, then they don't know. And sometimes we'll never get calls because they're handy, they know what they're doing, and then some don't. And there's different language barriers, there's different ways of what you've been exposed to growing up, and we're there just to make sure that we give them as much information as possible to make their lives easier, and also that we're not sending trades out all the time. And there are times where if we are finding that there's a gap of knowledge, we physically go out to the property and meet them there and say, hey, let's actually troubleshoot and go through this.
Can we talk a little bit more about your pre-purchase support, Sophie?
So, yeah, how
would someone find you? What would be sort of the first lead-in point if you're supporting them with pre-purchase inspections and so on?
So it's been really common for investors to talk to their broker, find out how much how much they can borrow, look on realestate.com, buy a property, wait till it goes unconditional, close to settlement, and then they get in contact with the property manager. But there's a lot of stuff in between of, is the property actually rent ready? Is it compliant? Is there anything that's coming up as a red flag that we need to address before a renter moves in? Is the area going to attract what that property is, and vice versa? And that's a lot of the conversation piece that we can have even before they've committed to purchasing. And it's not to stop them from purchasing. We definitely need and want more rental properties in the area, but it is a big financial decision, and we have we can sort of fill that gap around what their expectations are and making sure that actually fits. Because especially if an older property is purchased, I think a lot of investors don't realise how much the upkeep can be every year in maintenance and repairs, and having a little bit of an understanding or budget in place so they can go, okay, this is the purchase price, but let's actually set this money aside as well for capital improvements, depreciation plans, all that sort of thing that can come into play as well.
So you're having those conversations up front before the purchase is even signed off, like you're talking about capital improvements, because obviously then that provides them with a whole heap of, budgeting and cash flow management. So that's so empowering for a person that's ready to invest.
Absolutely. And we do find as well that they might have an idea that they need to do renovations or need to do capital improvements. And I'd say to them, look, go and have a chat with your advisor, but I'm telling you right now, you're probably going to get an extra $30 of rent, because that's what the market is indicating right now. If you're about to go and put $50,000 to get an extra $30 of rent, I suggest you're probably going to get a better return of investment somewhere else.
I think that's that balance. We find people come in and go right back to the top of it, where they come in and say, I want to buy an investment property. Okay, like why? Go right through that process. Generally, they're trying to accumulate wealth, which is what we were talking about earlier. Let's say we go through that process and then we go, okay, like property is probably appropriate for this circumstance. Then it's like, what style of property are they going to purchase? Like, and some of them want passive income, but they're trying to buy something that's basically purely focused on capital growth. Yeah. So at what point do you sort of, I suppose, help with that guiding process? So where do you guys fit in? And is that common? You find people that are sort of, they're wanting to invest in property, but they want to do it in the wrong style of property?
There's a million ways to invest, and even myself, I go through the whole, I want something that's cash flow positive and I want capital improvement. That's the ideal word for everyone, right?
It's not too many.
And for me, when it comes to the pre-purchase side of it, that's not my role. The role of a buyer's agent or a financial advisor or a specialist in that particular area is there to guide them in that direction. When they come to me, I would expect that they have already a strategy in place and say, we're looking at this, we need a minimum 4% yield, and this is our strategy essentially. And then we map it out and go, all right, based on your purchase price and the return that you need, these are the areas that you could potentially look at, but they're coming in already with some education. The part that we add extra education on is it actually going to rent for that amount? Is there work you need to put into it that you didn't really factor it into your costs? Is it going to attract the renter that you're looking for? What's the turnover rate of renters? So you have to factor in all your letting fees and everything. There are some areas that have an average of 3-year tenancy span, and then there's some that have 12 months. And they're all within a 10-minute radius of each other. So it's good to be armed with that information. So then they go, okay, well, what is the reality of holding this over the next 10 years while I'm waiting for that capital growth to happen, that the strategic partner put that together for me.
There's so many layers to it. I see where people have got it wrong, and then they come in and they've got a property and it's like not doing what they want for them, but they had just unrealistic expectations. What they thought they could get rent on it, or what they what they wanted it to do. Like, the biggest thing with any investment is you just need time, like you need duration. So you need to look at it and say, okay, I need to hold this for a decade to get capital growth what's it look like in that decade? What's going to cause me to not be able to hold it? And a lot of people don't really, like, there are some very short runways. What I see, people will expose themselves to heavy levels of risk. The other one I see often is where they think they'll reduce their risk exposure by like buying a unit instead of buying maybe like a standalone property, and then they take on less risk and less debt, but it's just not really fit for what they were trying to do. Like they sort of go too far down the spending scale. Like you probably need to spend a reasonably solid amount to get something that's investment sort of grade. Do you see a bit of that? And I suppose units have a purpose too. It's not to say they're not, that they're very, very different.
Well, and this where it comes down to their strategy and what they speak about with their accountant, financial advisor, all that. The townhouse market is actually performing better from a yield perspective than what your standard 3-bedroom on a big block is at the moment. But a lot of development, because of population growth, is happening in Geelong. So you've got more seasoned investors that are going, I'm going to essentially forfeit the yield and buy a block because I know that in future I'm going to be able to put the townhouses on it or develop it. Whereas a first-time investor, they may suit having a unit and then having that as their stepping stone to get to the next one, because they're not going to know how to develop a property in the next 5 years. And if they do, the one thing that I learned from a lot of our seasoned investors is that you lose a lot of money out of your first transactions because you're learning the mistakes as you go. It's and it's an expensive way to learn mistakes.
It's almost near impossible. Like in today's market, from the numbers we've seen, is that you unless you're like a developer, you're probably not going to make money doing it like an old battle axe block out the back thing. Like it's just not, it just doesn't stack up. But everyone has that dream. Like it's so many people who go, oh yeah, no, big block Bell Park, got to hold on to it.
Well,
2 townhouses.
I had a classic one the other week. Great guy. He's got one property already. He's held back for 10 years, good capital growth, and now he's on to his next. And there's always that listening to what other people are doing and hearing how great it is that they've got 10 properties, 11 properties, 12 properties, they're building this portfolio. But there's also that question of, do you actually need that many properties to achieve what you want to achieve? So there was this conversation that I had with him just before the weekend, and he was like, yeah, but I don't think I want to cap myself at 2 or 3 properties. And I'm like, then why did you get there with your strategist? Because it sounds like what you want versus what you actually need might be different, and it might be worth revisiting that before we move any forward with this, because I'm not there to give financial advice. I'm there for you to come to me with a clear strategy and go, these are the properties that I want you to assess. Are they going to fit in with the strategy that we've put together? If I'm feeling like there's a little bit of hesitation, or they get caught up in but I want to buy 2 properties at the same time and then have this, and they're going to grow, and you can sort of tell that they're probably they probably might just need a little bit more advice and maybe just take a step back. Or if they're having a look at multiple properties and having me go out to look at multiple properties, I take a step back and I go, I think you need to revisit your accountant, your mortgage broker, your this or that. Or if you're getting too caught up in the analysis of properties and you can't make a decision, contact a buyer's agent.
Okay.
I was like, trying not to laugh, because it's just so common to see that, like people where they like over analysis of it as well, like they're getting caught up in all these micro details, or on the other side, is it that they heard it in the street, or they say, I reckon property's going to go up in the next 12 months, and you go, that is not enough reason on its own to be pulling the trigger on it. Like maybe it's probably not even a factor. Like it's probably shouldn't even be thought about. Like we always say, like, you have your stock take of your own situation, and then you make your plan about what you're trying to achieve. And if there's so many instruments, like we use property for some clients, we use shares for others, we might just use it. They might just need a term deposit. Like,
it's got to be fit for purpose.
Yeah. And I think, there's a lot of content and a lot of push for people who have got this obsession with just building ridiculous amounts of property wealth, or just not even wealth, like just actually having a heap of them and a lot of debt. But like, what are they trying to do? Like, apart from being able to say they've got 10, like what do you actually have net? If you had to liquidate all of them in a hurry, what would you actually have in your pocket? A lot of them would have very little. No. And the cash flow off them, especially with rates, not that they're that high, but at current levels, you wouldn't see that many that are positively geared if they've got a large portion of debt against
Yeah.
it. So
And then they're like, oh, but we can do that by adding a granny flat. And I'm like, yeah, but then you have to pour another $300,000 into it to increase your yield to 6%. And again, go back and have a chat with your accountant or financial advisor because as a property manager, this is going outside of property management. I learnt this through making the mistakes, through investing, through understanding financial literacy, but I didn't grow up in that either. So it is one of those things that you learn along the way, and you have to take a step back sometimes and go, is this emotion at play, or does this actually fit into what you want to do long term? Because money is an emotional thing, and so is housing. And a lot of people see themselves as, oh, I wouldn't live in this, so I'm not going to buy it. I'm hitting some triggers now.
Triggering me. The other thing I find, I'm sure you've had this too, is the people that lived in that house that then becomes an investment, and they always overvalue it from if they were to sell it, overvalue it from a rental yield, because they see all the benefits, but they've lived there for a decade or 5 years or whatever.
Undervalue.
That's true too.
I've done that myself.
Yeah.
The first property that we lived in, when it converted to a rental, I undervalued it by almost $80 a week.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I took a step back and looked at the data and said, I actually need to look at what this is. And that was almost $100 a week that I would have left in pocket if I was making an emotional decision.
I love what you said there though, Sophie, because exactly as you've articulated, you support investors and you're detached and you allow them to make a decision that's not emotion driven. It's what is your goal? Is this investment fit for purpose? Why? And I think we talk about, as professionals supporting our clients, that's our superpower, isn't it?
It is. But it's also understanding what their long-term goals are, because when it comes to the financial side of it, that's something that they need to work out for themselves. But sometimes they purchase a property knowing that they're going to live in it with their family, or when the kids move out of home and they're looking to downsize. And even if they haven't lived in it, they have a emotionally vested interest in it to make sure that it is well maintained. But I flip it around and go, cool, that's your long-term plan. Let's actually get it ready for when you want to move into it. And then you can treat it as an asset, but you can do those small upgrades. If you want solar, if you want to upgrade it to a ducted heating system, that not only is going to just create great improvement in rent returns for you, but you're getting it ready for that time. Instead of having to fork out all that money when you move in, you can do it gradually as well. So it's there's a bit of understanding both sides of it, that there's always going to be emotion at play at some level, and then how to sort of direct that into making it practical decisions, and then how we can support that in the day-to-day.
I'm curious to touch on something you said earlier about rental tenancy terms, and some being an average of 12 months in the arrears. Can you give us an idea of why that differentiates so much in an area that you said is only sort of 10 minutes apart?
So what I find is that there's areas that, especially high growth areas, so if we take Armstrong Creek and Mountain as example, even Lara, because Lara is now the next greenfield area, a lot of people are moving into the area to look at whether they want to live there long term. So for those areas, it's a until when. So I'm going to rent here until I've purchased a property, until I've decided whether I want to be here long term, until my house is ready, because they might be building. So because they already have the intention of living there, knowing that they're going to leave, it creates a more common churn around 12 to 18 months. And that's all fine and well, as long as it's all factored into it, because what I say to investors is every time that happens, that's more money in our pocket. That's letting fees, that's advertising that goes to realestate.com. So knowing that from the first hand, you can then factor in, all right, every 12 to 18 months, we're going to have a bit of a bit of an extra, bit of turnover. Whereas there are some areas like East Geelong, Herne Hill, they have lower turnover rates, because I find that the higher the owner occ to rental, people tend to stay longer. It's just a bit more tightly held, less movement happening, and they're moving there because of needing to be in a particular school area, so Highton. that tends to have a long-term tenancy because they're getting into certain areas. Newtown, because of Chilwell, depending on what's happening in their life stage. And a lot of people are also rent vesting now as well. So they're renting because they have a purpose to be there, and that's going to fit into their long-term over 5 years while the kids are in school.
So that school thing is massive, isn't it? That pool, which have seen it with rezoning of like Belmont High and things, getting uplift in property areas and things like that, and then the rental side of it too. And even in some suburbs like Highton, it's sprawling, like it's so big now, but like there's pockets of Highton, like probably back near the uni, that would have really short turnover. Like there'd just be students churning in and out all the time, or even nurses at the hospital, versus some of those more older areas where the people have been in there for decades.
Yeah. And rooming house has changed heaps as well. Like there aren't students that are living in student housing anymore because students are mainly doing online working, or the actual popularity of going to uni is starting to drop off a little bit as well. So rooming houses, that whole landscape it has changed and will be changing over the next couple of years as well.
What's sort of the most popular style of property? That might be a tricky question or a silly question. Like, are you saying that you might have touched on this earlier, like those townhouses, and there's a lot of people that are seeking that sort of style of living. Do you think people are moving to that from a tenant perspective? Like, is that where most people are trying to get into, or is
it was really interesting, and my assumption was that family homes were going to be the best performing homes. If you get a 5-bedroom home within a 5-kilometre catchment of Geelong, they go off like hotcakes because there is such a shortage of large family homes. So that's one side of it. But you mentioned before, like I mentioned before, about townhouses, that they are yielding and getting better returns. When I found that out, and it's not a huge amount, it's like 500 average for a 3-bedroom home versus a townhouse that's getting 520 to 525 a week. So it's not huge, but I'm like, why would small land, no backyard, why would that be performing better? And then when I drilled into the data, all over 50% of our rental demographic are childless couples.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they don't need the big backyard.
They don't want it.
They don't want it. They want low maintenance. Yeah. And it's becoming harder to rent properties unless there's a gardener included, because they're like, we don't want to have to maintain the backyard unless it fits in with they love being in the garden, but it's not happening as much as what it used to now.
I wondered if that would be that push. The other thing I think we've seen with our clients is that downsizing generation too, and them pushing to low maintenance. But then those single level townhouses, like they're so rare. Like most of them have popped up 2 levels, which don't suit the oldies. So any of those, like they're crazy. And again, most of them are actually buying it, but there is the odd renter as well, and you see them. The good thing with the renting is they can scale down appropriate to their lifestyle needs as well. And I think people are much more open-minded to that. Some people feel like they'll never be able to afford to buy 2, which is a bit of a negative approach to it, but they sort of accept that it's their fate and they just rent where they want to live too. There's definitely a swing to that.
And I think it's a bit of a mindset shift around being able to buy where you want to live versus buying where you can invest and then renting where you can live. And that's where the rent vesting has become really popular. And if it fits your lifestyle to rent there, great, do it. If it's going to cost you more in a mortgage and you do it just because you want to live there, is it really a good decision? Again, it might be long term. That's where you guys come into play, but we're seeing the trend more and more of rent vesting.
Random question, this just pops to my mind, is around term of leases. So like, are you seeing that people push for having longer leases, or is it still 12 months is very traditional?
Yeah, they're pushing for longer leases because there's been such a change of properties coming on the market. There's been a lot of uncertainty, especially during COVID days when things just absolutely went crazy. We're now back in a normal market, but it's still stayed relatively, like the vacancy rate's still been sitting at 1% for such a long time. And now there's more and more need for security and stability. But because there are some owners that are like, yep, that's absolutely fine, more than happy to. We always like to start off with 12-month leases, especially on the initial tenancy, because you never know like 12 months is a long time. They may go through a separation. They may have another child that they weren't expecting, and then they need a bigger home, or the owners may need to sell. And it's good. But there are some owners that after the first initial tenancy, they're like, yep, let's just let's just go for another 2-3 years, and that absolutely suits them as well.
I see people saying, "Oh, we want to try and get 2 years. We want to try and get 3." Like there's just that anxiety, and that's where like I think renting creates an anxiety for people about displacement.
Yeah.
But like I think I don't know what the numbers are. It probably doesn't happen that often, but it's that one story that everyone hears and everyone's scarred by, or it happened, and it does happen to people. Don't get me wrong, but it creates an uncomfortable living environment.
And with renters as well, again, when they're looking for housing, they're looking for security, right? It's that's just a core need that people are wanting. If renters even catch wind that the owners might be selling, it's enough to make it shaky and to go, you know what? Because I know that it might happen, I might start looking now. So having that conversation and knowing where the owners are at and being able to have the timely conversation, so then we're not creating unnecessary stress on people. That's a skill within itself to make sure that we're not creating uncertainty when it's not really necessary either.
It's funny that on the other side, like I had clients where we thought that like it's approaching the right time for them to sell a property, and they're petrified about getting. We need to get a valuation. Like we're probably going to get a couple of agents or someone through, and the tenants will run, like they'll flee straight away. They'll be thinking that they're going to sell it from under them, and like they get worried about that as well.
I did the exact same thing on my investment property. It took me 2 months to tell them because I was petrified that they were going to leave, and I'm like, that's my, like, of course for them to feel unstable, but I'm like, that's also a loss of income for me, and then we have to make a decision before we want to make a decision. And then when we finally told them, they're like, that's all right, mate, do what you got to do, we'll just start the opens and everything. I'm like, oh, okay, it wasn't. So again, like all the fears that an investor goes through, it doesn't stop because I know the legislation. Like all the fears and all the uncertainty is still there for, doesn't matter how much you know about the reality of things.
So that's the point with that, like with shares in the market, like you know, we understand the fundamentals and the market can go up and down, but when it's going down, like I still look at my own investments and go like, I don't like that. Like you still don't feel great about it.
I don't look at my investments at all.
Because we're all human. It's just how you react to that, and then like if you can, you know, you don't let that stifle that.
I don't look at my index fund account at all. I'm just set and forget, and just know that long term it'll do its thing.
Tune out. That's the best way to do it.
Lots of behavioural finance studies on as investors how we feel losses so much more than we feel gains.
Yeah. People fear things too, though, like the emotional side of it, like we've seen it, and it's not really our position to state it, but you sort of see people's properties and they tell us what they're renting it out for, and we might go, "Look, that seems pretty low, like based on what it's worth or something." They'll be like, "Oh yeah, but tenant's been good. I don't want to don't want to upset them." And you go, "When did you last increase their rent?" They're like, "Oh, 3 or 4 years ago." And you're like, I know that they've been a good tenant, but like, why did you buy this property? Like, and then go back through that whole purpose piece. So many people actually been too nice. Like,
yes, and I rant about this a lot with my clients. And I say there are so many other ways that you can take care of a tenant without it affecting your asset. Because if you keep it low, and there's a classic thing that's happening at the moment where the renters have been there for a long time, the owners have kept the rent low to take care of them, but then they have to sell. And in the price range that they're selling in, it's selling to an investor, but then the investor can't purchase it because they're fixed in and they're essentially less, and the yields don't make sense. So now and then the rent, because they have to then do the property up, or they have to make sure that it can be purchased by an investor, so then they can move on. They then ask the renter to leave. So you've given them some sort of financial gain for a period of time, but then they just lost their home. Like for me it just doesn't make sense. Like if you want to take care of them, listen to them giving feedback about the house, and then if you are doing a rent increase, factor that in. Put in a security door, put in the light at the back like they've been asking for, or update the heating. Like, there are so many things that are so valuable to a tenant, but a lot of tenants will actually not complain about their living circumstances to keep cheaper rent. And it's like, it's just not fair across the board. You're living without heating or with other issues. No one should be living without heating. It's a minimum standard, guys. Just but I see it happen all the time, and I just don't think it's the right way to go.
Yeah. It's just like a typical like emotional control like thing, isn't it? That everyone's worried about what other people are thinking. There's a story you've told yourself in your head about it. Like, it's just like
I was looking at a post the other day in one of the investment forums, and they were talking about self-managing, and I'm all for self-managing if you've got the right education and you know what you're doing and you don't get emotionally involved if things don't go right. All for it. But on average, you're saving yourself $40 a week to self-manage.
Oh, wow.
And you're taking on all of the grunt work of the maintenance and managing that and the keeping financial records and all that. And then when I broke it down, to have a property manager there for the equivalent of a full-time 30-hour week, you're only saving yourself about $1.10 an hour.
Yeah.
To self-manage. So, and then they're like, yeah, but if we do that, then we can keep the rents low. It's like, yes, but is your time worth $40 a week? And is their time $40? It just, there's a lot of justifications that happen, but then in the grand scheme of things, it adds more time back in their day, but not that much more income.
I find that with people doing like DIY investing and stuff too, like they'll be fixated, like obsessive about costs, but they haven't thought about how much time they're putting in to do it themselves, or what they're actually giving up to try and keep one you just pay for it somewhere else.
And I make those decisions myself, because I did grow up quite save everything, save all the money, do everything yourself. And then as I got older, as I started running the business, you then learn, you're either wasting time or you're wasting money. That's the reality of it. It's exchange of time or exchange of money. And then I have to look at it and go, all right, in this particular scenario, is money more important or is my time more important?
We only have X amount of time in a week. Like, we can make endless amounts of money, but we only have so much time.
And it's just simple from my perspective. If you don't have that skill set, then you should be having someone that has that skill set manage it for you.
Or if you don't enjoy it.
Yes,
just don't do it.
Yeah.
People ask us all the time, we talk about this a lot in podcasts, about where, like, who's your best client, and it's like always it's the ones who know what they know and the ones who don't. Like, if they know what they are good at and what they can do, and they know the value of paying or spending money on investing in others to do those other things, they're the best ones, because they understand what you do, they respect that, they understand it, they work well. Same thing.
It's a partnership.
Yeah. Maybe, Ben, if we circle back a little bit to Element Property Network, and I understand that 2024 was a particularly big year of growth, so maybe you can give us a bit of history.
Where did you find that?
This is where you start. You be careful when you put stuff out on this.
Lots of information available on social media.
I can't even remember what I even where I even shared that. Yeah, we started the business. I was in property management for 10 years. I was consulting for a couple of years in between that before I decided to start the business. And when I started the business, it was never to be the biggest and the best or become number one or grow really quickly. I don't get a lot of ego from that. My ego or my confidence comes from making sure that we're delivering on our promises, and that had been my previous experience, and that was one thing that I wanted to change. And again, enhancing the customer relationship with using technology and AI instead of replacing it. And I was finding a lot of that was happening in volume agencies. And when I started the business, it was, let's just go back to those core values and see what happens. I never really had I had a plan of what I wanted to put out into the community, but not from a growth perspective. And then that naturally happened, and it just slowly grew for the first 3 years. And then, there was that year where we ended up doubling in a 12-month period. And that's great. Awesome. Great team. Pat on the back. A lot of learning lessons came from that, as well as a business owner. A lot of it. So that was a big year of growth, both professionally and personally as well, for me and for the team.
few teething issues, is it fair to say, when you've got that level of
100%.
growth?
Like, I find that when you're, especially because it wasn't in the plan, like it just started compounding and naturally happening, which is just a testament that what we were doing was, and was good. So we started getting referral business and all that, because we are referral only, and it just started happening. But I sort of took a step back and I went, we're running a business of this size with the mindset and the systems and processes of this size. And that's when the, growth is great, but also retention and customer experience is way more important to me than anything else. So it is that making that call of going, all right, what do we need to put in place now to make sure that we can prepare for that, for the next growth. And now it's that was where, team hiring, making sure we had the right team members in place with the right skill set, them understanding investing and not just property management.
Probably different for a lot of them. They probably come from a pure, well, I'll probably find they come from pure investing or pure property management, not the hype.
Yeah, so I've got a property manager who has just come into property management, but she's been an investor for a long time, so she understood that side of it. And then I've got trained up juniors that understand property management and the systems and processes, but they don't understand investing. And the skill sets and the training that we have to do for both have to be tailored to make sure that it is that our clients are getting what they need as well. And I had to, because I've been a property manager, I'm comfortable in the day-to-day. I had to learn to then be a leader and learn to not be a control freak, learn how to let go, and put those systems and processes in place that it was all consistent. So
it's easier said than done. And I think we in this business is a similar thing where, we don't want it to be people-centric. Like, we don't want it to be like that you only deal with me or Delta or Jay or Peter. Like, you have to meet the whole team, and then everyone has to also understand what we're trying to achieve and why, and then actually genuinely believe in that mission as well. Because otherwise there's only so many people you can service as an individual well. Like, even if you get your processes and everything really, really efficient, but there's only so much time that you have to meet the level of standard that you want to set as that person. So I think, like you said, you can scale it more. You can have way more people, customers, clients, whatever you want to call them, but you're not going to give them the experience that you actually want. And that's what started it all.
And that's where, when it's at the core of it all, we want to make sure that every client feels as special as they did on day one. So that's always at the core of everything we do. So the decisions that we make in the business comes down to, is that the experience that we're giving them? But the way that I first started it is little on me, and then one part-time, to now having a team of 5, and then the skills that I had to learn to make sure that was consistent across the board, and that the clients were also getting that as well. What I imagined the business would look like back then isn't what I imagine now, because I'd never experienced that. So there's so much learning that happens during those periods of growth as well.
Question about, I suppose, service area. Like, are you only working around Geelong region, or like Bellarine, or do you do property management and investment advisory like everywhere? Like, what's it look like?
We do Geelong, Bellarine, Golden Plains and Surf Coast. So that's our core catchment, like Geelong and sort of 35k. That's my area. I do have a property manager that started in Geelong, lives in Melbourne. And that was something that, again, I didn't expect. And I didn't expect to grow in Melbourne. It's not my core area, but my team member, Amy, covers Melbourne now, and that wasn't in the business plan, but that was in the people, like, that was wanting to retain her, and she's such a great team member that we were like, all right, well, if that's what's going to happen and that's how it's going to naturally grow, then that's absolutely great. But my core area is Geelong. We've got a few out in Ballarat as well. And that was more to do with referrals. So we've got a few out there as well.
I think owning those locations, if you're not going to, you find it hard to view. Like, say you've got Amy who's in Melbourne, that she can own that space and she knows it, and even Ballarat, it's not, it's only just down the road. When you're trying to manage properties like all over the country, like, you're starting to lose a bit of touch with.
100%, and I'm very big on local knowledge. But I can't dismiss as well that there are some property managers that have that model. We have out-of-town property managers that we do the on-the-ground stuff for them.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm essentially like an extended team member for them, that they can continue to service their client even though they're wherever they want to be. There's merit in that and good on them. It's not really the service that I wanted to do, but I'm glad that they've figured out other ways that they can do it. But when it comes to trades and things like that, you know, knowing the areas, knowing the trades, and that's where the pre-purchase stuff, I can't do pre-purchase in Bendigo because I don't know Bendigo. I don't know the streets that are performing well or that might have a bit of a bad reputation, or this happened here and all that. I definitely think that local matters in this situation.
I think the more you spend time with people who really understand local markets, the more you realise it's not just the city, it's not just the suburb, it's literally down to the street, the block, the orientation. Like, you know, you quickly go like, okay, there's a lot to this.
Yeah. Even looking at East Geelong, there are some areas that are amazing and there's some areas that still going to take a little bit of time. But even with Amy, she has a very small catchment in Melbourne because that's her area. And when you look at Melbourne, 5 kilometres down the road and you're in another sphere.
Yeah, I was just Melbourne. She's covering all of Melbourne.
No. And that catchment is even lower because of travel time, and each suburb and each pocket is so just segregated into its own little community. But there are, with the investor support, if there is, like, we have clients that go, hey, we just bought in Hoppers Crossing, or we just bought in Laylaw, or this, great, have a chat with this property manager. They have the same values, they do what we do, and you're going to have a great experience. So we've got west, north, east, all covered as well.
Awesome.
Maybe outside of Element Property Network now, Sophie, if we could talk a little bit about some of the community involvement that you have. Again, I was doing a bit of a deep dive last night.
What did you find?
All good.
It is all good. So back at the end of last year, there was a program with a donation support to Lifeline. Maybe we could talk a little bit. Yeah, because clearly that's a passion within your business as well. Yeah,
mental health and building resilience, especially with younger generation, because mental health is a big area, not only for adults, but it is growing in children as well. That's a big focus of mine personally, making sure that we're taking care of ourselves as much as we're taking care of others. But Lifeline is a local community outreach where people can call free of charge, and I found out through education of Lifeline that for each call that they make costs about $39, and $39 could potentially save a life. So for every property that we lease, we donate $39 towards that initiative.
Wow, so that's an ongoing donation.
Yep.
Yeah. And the other thing I picked up on was I think it was back in Christmas of 2023. So this is really a deep dive here. There was an Airbnb property that you actually donated for the Christmas period, and I'd love to hear about the ripple effect that created.
That actually blew me away. I didn't think too much about it. I saw that there was a cancellation. There was a family that had booked on the Ballerine. Something had happened in their family and they couldn't make it anymore. And the property was going to be sitting there vacant over Christmas. And I went, you know what? Let's just see if someone wants to tag someone that they've been having a bad time, and maybe that would just cheer them up having a couple of days away. And I put it on the local community page, and it was amazing to see how many people wanted to reach out and help that next person, to go, this person deserves some time away, this is what's going on in their life. The private messages that I got, I must admit, I was in tears, because seeing how hard people have been going, like things that people have been going through in their personal lives and why they deserve that. I actually sat back and I looked at Tim, my partner, that night, and I was like, I wish that I could do this more. I wish that there could be a little initiative once I'm there in the business financially to be able to go, hey, let's just 3 times a year and have, just pay for a weekend away for someone that deserves a little getaway. And it just it blew me away how quickly the community would come together to help that next person, and the stories of the reality of what's going on in people's nose at the moment.
Yeah, well done. It created a very positive ripple effect for lots of people that saw your post.
And unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there who there's some terrible situations, and we just sometimes we don't cross paths with that. And sometimes I think, speaking for Dusty, we often cross paths with some pretty bad stuff, like some people that have been really through unfortunate circumstances, just no fault of their own, whether it's health or otherwise. It's some pretty unfortunate things happen. So to be able to give back to that, and it's hard at that balancing act of making sure you're sort of maintaining yourself first and then helping others as an extension.
And reality is we go into people's lives all the time. So we see things and we're exposed to things that we never imagined. So that's where the mental health of the team is super important. It's nothing that touch wood. there's nothing that we've been exposed to that has been really traumatizing in a sense, but we do see a lot of what happens behind closed doors, and we have to make sure that we're educating ourselves on how to pick up a distress situation or domestic violence. There's a lot of those things that we have to be attuned to and understand, because that's the reality of what's happening in people's lives at the moment.
You're going literally into their homes, like in those inspections, is pretty privileged position to go into. I think that building that resilience part is that key. Even with the team, we do so much stuff around, that personal development and growth and challenges that you will come across and managing them, because you want your whole team environment, and, even your friends and family to be, have that toolkit to actually be able to navigate those things, because shit will go wrong. There's always something that's going to come up, and it doesn't matter. You think you're doing the right things, that sometimes it's no fault of yours.
No, not at all.
Your desks.
And that's where having the team and having those transferable skills to be able to support each other. You mentioned before that you can't do it all, and sometimes you can do it all, but sometimes you don't have the capacity to, or the mental capacity to. And if someone's come to work and they're feeling like a 4 out of 10, being able to have that open space where they can say, I'm really, like, something's happened, or there's something going on in my life and I'm really not feeling it today, to be able to step in and help that next person so then they can have the time and space to do what they need to do. We're not robots, and we never will be. We can't just walk into the door and close off everything that's happening. And it is going to affect our performance, and we have to take that into account.
Definitely. I think, again, every time we almost have a conversation with someone, we had Shane on the other day, like the same things, same themes coming up for people, and everyone wants to help and do something and be proactive about it. So I suppose to wrap up, how do we find you? What's the best way to find yourself or the team at Element Property Network?
Yeah, well, we're located down in Newtown, down in Bridge Street near the Belling Sanctuary. You can find us online by Googling Element Property Network, the website, and we're pretty active on social media as well.
Awesome. We'll add all those links into the show notes. Anything else from you, Delta?
No, I just wanted to thank Sophie for coming on. It's been a really informative session.
Thank you.
Always good to talk property. I don't know why. It's just like, it's nice. It's good. So thank you again.
Thank you.